What is going on, YouTube land? Greg here with Gondel Outdoors, and I figured I was going to change it up a little bit today. I'm not standing, I'm seated. We're going to talk about some leader building. I'm headed out on the water tomorrow, and I haven't used my Euro rig probably since the end of last season, so wanted to change it up a little bit. Been running the Allegheny rod just about every week I can, and I promise I'm filming tomorrow. Yes, it will be Euro Nymphing, but the Allegheny rod, if you haven't used an Allegheny rod yet or haven't talked to Cal yet, get on the phone, send him a message, do something, check out his rods. That 4-weight is just killer. I know he's been building a lot of custom rods, so he's really busy. We still have our 3 excavators to sell. We have not had any orders yet, so if you are interested in an excavator, 11-foot 2-weight, I'll explain in this episode why the 11-weight is so important. But go ahead and message us here on YouTube, Instagram, hit up Allegheny Rod Company, tell them you want an excavator. They're $3.99, 11-foot 2-weight, full well grip. Things just gonna be phenomenal. So 3 to sell, 3 ready to go, ready for you to be ordered and get built and sent to you directly. I don't touch any of the money. I don't make any money from it. Just something we're doing. Want to see Cal, skyrocket. He makes a great rod. So again, reach out or at least give him a follow on Facebook or Instagram. All right, so get that part out of the way real quick, because as I mentioned, the 11-foot, the reason I wanted the 11-foot built is because from my competition days, the governing body of fly fishing competitions, FIPS Mouche, sets in stone what you can use and cannot use. So there's a lot of guys that Euro nymph, and I've seen them Euro nymphing, tight lining, tech nymphing, whatever you want to call it, locally, which is great. The downfall is a lot of these guys run straight mono on the reel, which you cannot do technically if you decided to get into a competition. So the rule states that your built leader can not be longer than 2 times your rod length. So there are a lot of 10-foot rods out there. Gives you 20-foot leader total. That includes your tippet, everything. So I always ran an 11-foot rod so I can get just a little bit extra mono on there. Now, obviously from the time I competed to current, there's been a lot of changes in line design and line manufacturing, as far as competition lines, Euro nymphing lines, so on and so forth. So the reason I wanted to do this, one is I had to build, or have to build a leader for tomorrow. 2, show you my basic breakdown, even though I have a competition line on my reel. And the reason most guys run mono or run, the long leaders is to keep sag out of the line. You want to get that perfect drift. So that's what Euro nymphing is all about. You want to have contact with the bottom. You want to know that you have no slack in your line, so that when you feel the take or the bite, whatever you want to call it, you have the feel come back to you very quickly, and you can set your hook, hopefully put a fish in the net, take it over to the judge in the competition case. If not, get it to the net, take some pictures, let it go back into the water. So my competition reel, the last competition reel I used, is this guy right here. This is the Range, and I apologize, I don't have the sound turned off on my watch. This is a Range reel, and this is a 3/4 weight, super lightweight reel. I run a lot of Galvins on all of my other rods, but I always liked the size of this for competition. This is what I use. I actually have 2 of them. Phenomenal reel. They also have Walton rods, so shout out to those guys, another PA based company. So if you look very closely in here, you can see I have orange backing, my Rio competition line, and then I have started building this leader. So what I normally start with, and everybody does it a little bit different. A lot of guys use Maximo, which is a great leader, and some guys start heavier, some guys start midweight. I kind of fall in between, so I don't run the Maxima, I run Yozuri. I'll get a little close up there. This is the HD carbon, which is a fluorocarbon, 100% fluorocarbon, and it's 15 pound. and it's the disappearing pink. So let me see if I can get it focused in there for you, right there. So I've already cut this, and this is already on the reel. The reason that I did that before I started the video is because I do actually measure this out. I put a measuring tape on the ground, I measure this out exactly where I want it to be, and I'll give you all the details as we go. So this is a 15 pounder, this is what I start at my loop for my competition line. So we have 15 pounds right here in the Missouri, and there's 10 feet of it. So I run 10 feet from the actual comp line down. Now here's another thing to keep in mind, a lot of people don't realize, your knots, if you're custom building a leader for competition, again, I'm using this based on the competition world. I'm not saying that if you're not competitive or you're not competing, you don't have to follow this, but this will help in certain situations. So you must have 30 centimeters. Yes, obviously, it's a European governing body. So before I go from the Missouri to my next one, now obviously that's 10 feet, so there's a distance between the knots. But you have to have 12 inches. It has to be a 12-inch distance between knots. So the reason, one, I prefer to make sure that I keep it that way is, one, if I do have to keep some of the mono in my guides, my knots aren't getting stuck. But again, I have 22 feet of leader to build, so my knots will never be closer than 12 inches, except at the very end, I'll explain where. So the next thing I go to is an airflow. See if I can get that to focus. Come on, baby. Maybe. There we go. Airflow. This is 10.5 pounds. So again, I'm kind of like in that middle area. I don't go real heavy. I don't go, down to the 10-pound starter. I run in the middle. So this is 10.5 pounds or 2X. This is their premium nylon. And everybody asks why I changed from fluorocarbon to nylon. And I actually changed back again. So I just prefer this the way it acts in the water. So that's why I go with it. So I actually already have this tied on there, and I run, excuse me, 5 feet of it. So I'm at 15 feet currently. And you may get to see my puppies here in a minute because they both decided to come in here into the back room with me. So now I've got 15 feet built. Now, this is where things can get complicated. If you are going to run a sighter, everybody runs different sighters. Some use standard tippet line, some use sighter material, some use red monofilament, some use, everybody has their own type of thing, their own recipe for their leader build. I normally run two different versions. The version I'm about to show you is a standard indicator tippet line from Rio. Comes on a spool. I keep that in my pack, and that way if I get snagged, a fish takes off on me, anything that's going to snap a whole bunch of my leader, I can rebuild it right there on the water. I normally run, Umpqua makes the pigtailed indicator, and looks like a little slinky, and that's what I run because I prefer the coils, and that's basically how I detect strikes. If it's super heavy, fast water, I can watch that stretch out if I have a take. So the next thing I have on there, which again is already on the reel, is that Rio indicator tippet. It is a 3X, which is their 7-pound, and it is a red, green, red, green, red, green. So each section, this is going to be super hard to see on camera, but I'm going to try it. So you probably see that green, and you could just barely see the red below it or pink. So every, I believe it's a 6-inch section or 8-inch section, swaps colors. So my new puppy is discovering tippet for the first time. So again, I already have that on there. Here you can see the color a little bit better there when I stretched it. So that is already on the reel and ready to go. So my next two sections are key, and the reason being is I talked about the knots before. Those knots have to be 12 inches apart. So my very next step after the indicator is I go to a 4X Floral Strong from Rio. This is 7.3 pounds, so it's a little bit heavier, and the reason I do this is I don't like to have all the stress on the indicator. I prefer to have something in between my final tippet, I'll say, where my flies are, before it gets to my indicator. So I run a very small section of this just to create a buffer. And so I'm going to cut that right now, and we're going to tie that on. You're going to get to see my wonderful glasses, which I normally don't wear in videos. But so luckily for me, I know that when I stretch my arms straight out and out past my shoulders as straight as I can before it starts to hurt, that I have a 4-foot section of leader in my hands. So in this case, we're going to break it down a little bit. So there's my 4 foot. I fold it up. I find the loop at the bottom, and I cut just a little bit above it. And lid rig, must have. If you don't have a good set of nippers, get yourself a lid rig unit. So here's my like 2.5 foot section. And you can just kind of see the glare from the lights right there. So that's what I'm tying. So a lot of people ask what type of knots I use, blood knots, so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. I have never been a big knot guy. I probably will never be a big knot guy. And the reason being is when I first started competing, the very first couple guys that I fished with showed me the fastest, quickest way so that you can tie knots in the wind, tie knots quickly, and 90% of the time, these knots will not get stuck in your guides, especially on a competition rod. The guides are a little bit different. Can you use it on a regular fly rod? Absolutely. Is it the strongest knot? Probably not. Have I ever had a fish strip off a tippet before? Absolutely. Now, in the cases where I'm guiding, I may change things up a little bit unless we're on the boat or in the water and something breaks. This is how I fix it. So I use a double surgeon's knot. It allows the line to hinge a little bit, which sometimes isn't great, but because I fished it for so long, I kind of know how to combat that. So a double surgeon's is super easy. This is where the glasses come out. As I get older, I can't see real close, which is really not fun as a fly fisherman. So it's just one loop over with both lines right there. And you're going to take your tag ends and run them through that loop twice. And yes, I use my mouth an awful lot when I tie knots. So I apologize if I'm ducking out of the camera here. I don't think I've ever had to tie a knot in front of the camera before. So then I have both through twice, simple pull. I make sure I wet the knot real good. That comes from my uncle. And I give it a pretty good yank, make sure nothing's going to happen. It's not going to slide out of itself. Let me create a little more slack here so I can show you. So the two tag ends are facing up, right there. I have the tag ends in that hand. There's your knot. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to snip those tags off as close as I can to the knot. And now we're in business. So my cider, there's my knot, there's my 7.3 power carbon, power floral, and then last but not least is what you're going to use to tie your flies on. Obviously depending on water condition, depending on where you're fishing, depth, is it a lot of riffles, is it bigger fish, is it little fish? Everything kind of changes that game. Obviously we don't want the trout to see our tippet to the best of our ability. So for tomorrow's case, I'm going to a 5-pound. This is the Airflow fluorocarbon. It's their 4X, and basically the last 3.5 feet that I need to put on that leader is what will be used out of this. And this is the part where those knots come into play. So most Euro nymphers, Czech nymphers, tight liners, whatever you want to tag them as, run dual fly rigs. So competition wise, your flies must be 20 inches apart. Depending on how long your tippet is and where your last knot is going to dictate where you can put those flies, because your knots have to be 12 inches apart. Even though it's a tag line, you're still creating a custom leader with knots. So those knots have to be 12 inches apart, and your flies have to be 20 inches apart. So that's key when you come into that. So my leader going to my tippet, my final piece of material that goes onto my leader, is usually 3.5 to 4 feet long. Sometimes my sighter is shorter, depending on where I'm fishing. So a standard nymph built leader for competition still stays well within the double the limit rod or length limit, because of today's fly lines, the comp lines, the short Euro style lines, they don't need that long leader. I still prefer to run the long leader, even though in situations I can cut it down. I keep a pre-tied short leader in my pack, in my chest pack, in my vest, whatever I'm using, so that if the water dictates to me that I need something shorter and I run the comp line out, I basically just swap my rigs out, swap my leaders. But because the leader that was on this reel hadn't been fished in a while, I didn't want to chance anything, so I figured I'd build one and share some stuff with you guys while I was doing it. So here we go again. We're going to take this out. Get my 4-foot rule. And obviously I'm not competing, so I'm not going to measure this right down to 3.5. I'm going to go down to 4, or run it at 4. The other big thing, for those of you that maybe don't know the competition rules, and I'm just sharing stuff, but when you're building a custom leader, especially for competition, you must taper down. You can never go from heavy to light back to heavy. So you always must be tapering down from your butt section to your tippet. So in this case, I went 15, 10.5, 7, 7.3. It's the same diameter, which also plays. So if the weight is the same diameter, technically you are still tapering down by the time you get to your tippet. But again, I'm not competing tomorrow. I'm just sharing how I would normally build this for competition, because it's just how I always fish my leaders. I fish it just like I was when I was competing. And here we go again, where the glasses are probably going to have to pop back out. Let me try this without it. So again, I'm using the same exact knots all the way down. The only one that is different is my perfection loop, which my comp line from Rio does have a welded loop on the end. So I always tie a perfection loop to go to that loop. And if you do happen to have loops, another fun, fantastic rule in competition wise is your loops cannot be more than 10 centimeters. So get out those European rulers. I'm kidding. But this style, this is the style that a lot of guys shared with me when I first started competing. The type of leader that I build, it's always worked. and it's pretty easy to, build. So I just keep using it. And the knots get very much smaller as you go down. So again, can they still get caught in guides? Absolutely. Do they? Not very often. But is it a possibility for it to happen just like anything else? Absolutely. So there is my finished tippet end. And the reason I say that, because if I go 20 inches up from the tip of this, where my point fly would be, I go there, I am still a good probably 1.5 feet, maybe a little more, between my knots. So right about where my pinch is on my fingers is where tomorrow I will tie a tag end on here for a dropper, and that I still have, if I was competing, technically enough space between the knots to not have any issues with rules. So again, there's 1,000,001 ways to build leaders. Everybody does it a little different. This, again, as I said, was what was taught to me when I first started competing. I've always used it. I've never really had any issues. Have I lost a couple fish? Of course I have. Do I get snagged on stuff? Do I get stuck on things and trees and things you don't think of, especially when you know there's fish. You're casting to those fish and you're not paying attention to your surroundings. Happens to all of us. So hope you guys enjoyed that one. Stay tuned for more. I will be filming tomorrow. There will be some surprises coming in the next probably month or so that we'll share here. But there'll be some other things that go on, and you'll all be keen to that. But for now, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Hope you're out fishing tomorrow. Have any questions, feel free to comment. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll do some more stuff as far as reading water and things of that nature as the summer goes on. So until the next time, we appreciate you. Talk to you soon.